Ready, set, and go. Great. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the ASTN Masterclass Stadium Technology, Innovation and Insights. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we're all meeting today across this online forum. For myself, I recognise that I am hosting on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I repay my respects to elders past and present, and I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us here today. Thanks everyone for attending today. My name is Amy Crosland. I'll be moderating today's masterclass on stadium technology. And stadium tech is a particular note as we lead up to the green and gold runway of Brisbane 2032, where we have a number of major events taking place in all of our venues across the nation, and we find new ways to bring in audiences and to engage in those events in the calendar, and we're known for delivering on those year on year. So we have a fabulous panel joining us to go over some of the insights and the work that they do across various areas of stadium tech. I'll get them to introduce themselves in a moment, but briefly, as you would have seen, we will be speaking with Tanya Salavand, who's Senior EVP Hospitality and Entertainment from Globant. We've got Scott Fitzgerald, General Manager of Marvel Stadium, and Tim Kelly, the CEO of CloudMix. So before we get to our panel, I'm going to quickly throw over to Martin Schlegel, the Chair of ASTN, for a few words of introduction. Over to you, Martin.
Thank you, Amy, and welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know much about the ASTN is an industry-led not-for-profit membership organization, and our mission is really to not only advocate for sports tech, but also assist tech founders to commercialize their ideas in global markets. And for those of you who may know, we run programs from early stage, growth stage to export ready, export acceleration, and obviously knowledge sharing, which we do today through this webinar, is one of our cornerstone events that we do. And then really pleased to have the panel with us this morning here, Australian time, on stadium technology. And there will be obviously an international, but also a local perspective. And what I'm really excited about is that with our premium partner AFL and Marvel Stadium, we see sometimes that there's a little bit of hesitancy in Australia by corporates and large sporting organizations to tap into the enormous talent that is actually available right here at home in Australia. And so therefore, Scott and Tim will share a positive case study about how that actually unfolded. So with that, please check out other events that we run. Have a look around at all of the resources, content that we provide. And first and foremost, thank you to all our panelists and Amy and Haley for organizing this. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. I'm also going to take a moment to thank our ASTN supporters who make events like this possible today. So I'd like to thank the Department of Jobs, Skills, Industry and Regions at the Victorian State Government, the Department of Jobs, Tourism, Science and Innovation within the Government of Western Australia, and the Queensland Investment Corporation. So without their support, we wouldn't be able to have events like this and do some of the great work that ASTN is doing. So just a little bit about today's event. So we're going to have a bit of a discussion, and we will leave some time at the end for Q&A. So please use the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen to post your questions. There is a chat there as well. Happy for you to use that for any commentary, but if you do have questions, pop them in the Q&A. I'll be monitoring that, and we'll come to those at the end for sure. So, okay. Let's get to our panel. So you would have seen the bios for each of our fabulous panelists online, but what I'll do, instead of reading that out, I'll just throw quickly to each of you to give us a brief introduction of yourself, a bit about your company and the role, and then we'll get started with some questions. So we'll go Tanya, Scott, then Tim.
Great. Thank you so much, Amy Martin and the entire ASTN organization for this opportunity. As you might imagine, maybe by my accent, I am based in the US out of our New York offices at Globant. However, our local offices are in Sydney, so you might find some friendly faces there as well. So as mentioned, I am accountable for what we call connected experiences. Is where we bring the physical experiences overlaid with a digital experience to life to create seamless, frictionless, lineless experiences for fans, guests, and customers across sports and entertainment. Globant is a 20-year-old company, digital first. What that really means is at the core of everything that we do, it's focusing on how we enable the experience itself with a digital component that, again, elevates that experience to some degree. So this is a really good conversation piece for us because it's right at that intersection that we like to play with technology, data, strategy, and at the core of it, really the customer, the fan, the guest, and the journeys that they go on and how we along that journey are really enhancing that experience. That's a little bit about me, a little bit about the company, of course. We'll share more as we go through the conversation.
Thanks, Tanya. Scott.
Thanks, Amy Martin and the wider ASTN crew. It's great to be here and great to be able to share a bit about the busiest multi-purpose stadium in the world, which is Marvel Stadium. I'm fortunate enough to be the general manager of the stadium, looking after all facets of stadium operations, from commercial to operations, growing grass, which is important in stadia, generally speaking, and everything else in between, including content and, importantly, the guest experience, which we'll touch on. I'm very fortunate to have had a 18-year career in sport and stadia, and looking forward to being part of what's a very exciting and topical panel as we talk about the fan experience in sport.
Brilliant. Thanks, Scott. Tim.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks to the ASTN for having me here. Tim Kelly from CloudMix. We're a Melbourne-based streaming and broadcast company. So we do a lot with cloud-based productions of videos, commentary, live streams, overlaying graphics. And late last year, we got into sort of some real-time fan experiences. So using our cloud technologies to deliver real-time experiences to fans in stadiums. And it's been really exciting actually getting that going this year. And we are very used to streaming and, giving viewers online a really fantastic experience, but then translating that back down to the stadium to enhance that fan experience, particularly with what we've done with Marvel recently, has been really exciting. So excited to talk about all of that.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Okay, so question time. I'm going to start with Tanya, but obviously rest of the panel, please do feel free to chime in at any time, add to the discussion. Let's just make this, a conversation. So Tanya, I'll start with you. So Globant has been the key tech partner. So for providing that expertise and building that digital roadmap for the Intuit Dome, recently opened and the home of the Los Angeles Clippers. From what I saw, the vision of the Intuit Dome was described as, and I quote, a technologically advanced basketball-obsessed arena, and it was created for the fan, by the fan. So with that focus and that sort of, focus on that highly personalized fan engagement sort of lens, would you be able to tell us a bit about the work Globant have done in implementing that into the Intuit Dome?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you just said is exactly the mission that it started with. So imagine hearing that and thinking, what? So really, that's where we started. We started with this idea of what is that vision and how do we bring it to life? And I think what's really interesting is, if you look at all of the technologies that are being used within the stadium experience, not any one of those individually is something groundbreaking or new, but coming together and in this capacity at this scale is absolutely something that is the most technologically advanced and never seen before experience. However, and I think this is maybe relevant across all of the spaces that we work in, when you're in this space, especially in this industry, it's all about sharing knowledge. And I think that's one thing that we found that was quite exciting about this experience is as you're going and doing research of what's out there, understanding what the fans really want and how they want to experience the sport itself, you realize how much people have of feelings and emotions about it. As many of you know, sports are very personal to many people. They are born with it, raised with it. It's in some of your blood. And it's also an experience that is unlike any other. And I think that was something that we really wanted to bring out when we were thinking about what would that digital experience look and feel like. And some of that had to happen almost in parallel as the stadium was being built from the ground up, because putting in sensors into seats and spaces for queue management and flow is a very important thing that you can't do later. You have to do as a part of the process. Building into the seats the ability to gamify, so there are actually in every single seat, not just USB cords to connect and be able to charge your phones, which is very important for everyone, but also the ability to interact with the screens, with others within the stadium, with a gaming keypad. That in itself, again, things that you wouldn't normally think about within a stadium experience, was really something we wanted to create these unique components for. So from the start, it was about, let's get that big vision and think about what are all the pieces and parts of that vision, and where is technology enabling the experience? Because at the end of the day, much like any physical experience, you don't want everyone's head in their phone. You want them to be actually a part of the experience. The digital capability should just be enhancing it. So that was one mantra, or one North Star that we really kept in mind, is that anything that we build in from a digital component needs to be an enabler. It cannot take over. And in fact, going back to your comment of basketball obsessed, we wanted the fans who are there, who are obsessed with the team, with the game, to really be a part of the team and the game. So every aspect of the technology, whether it was, yes, the mobile experience, which does have the ease, frictionless, lineless entry and exit. There are no turnstiles, nothing that blocks you, just open walkway, leveraging biometrics, NFC or mobile tapping in order to come in and go. All the way through the commerce experience. So when you think about point of sale, food and beverage, merchandising, all of that is a just walk out. Again, similarly leveraging the same technology, biometric identification, payment identification, and or through mobile capabilities, and recently through wristbands as well. A la, maybe you recognize the Magic Band in Disney. Similar concept, being able to kind of tap in and out so that you have ease of access in and out. Very useful for bringing in your minors, children, especially because we don't want to collect payment information from them. We want to tie them back to an adult or guardian. So these types of nuances were the big things that we were building in. But all in all, it really was around what makes that customer experience. And actually, I should mention this, that the owner of the Clippers and the Intuit Dome space is Steve Ballmer. Some of you might be familiar with the name. And what he put out in his personal vision was, he said, I love watching basketball from my home because I can get up, go to the bathroom. I don't have to wait in line. I open the fridge, I grab my Coke. I'm back at my seat before the commercials are over, the halftime is over. That's what I want that experience to feel like. So we kept that in mind a lot as well. As you think about the comfort of your own home, what that looks and feels like, and what are the things that you can do in your own home that sometimes is hard to do in a stadium, an arena, and then let's eliminate all of that with some sort of digital capability. But that also puts into the space things like loyalty programs. So, as a fan, if I am a regular goer or viewer or participant at an event, I am recognized as someone who is a loyal fan. I will get rewarded for that. I get rewarded for showing up to my 5th game in a row, and will get an automatic notification that says, you just got, $10 off your next meal. Go to the nearest hot dog stand and pick up whatever you want. Those types of things make it incredibly personalized. And that was another piece of this that we wanted to really bring to life. If you're obsessed with the game and you're obsessed with the team, we want to make sure you're obsessed with being there all of the time, every home game. And by the way, not just games, because if you think about a stadium, especially in the NBA, they play 42 games at home. That's 42 days out of 365, which means the rest of that time is open for concerts, private events, and a million other things that one can come up with. So how do we think about this space more than just a game, but really about a space, a community, an ecosystem, and then leverage technology to bring it all together?
That's incredible. I love that. I love that you were sort of saying it's the coming together of everything. And I think the Intuit Dome has been such an awesome opportunity because it was built from the ground up. So you were just like, you know what? It's that question that you ask. If we were just going to do this from scratch, well, how would we do it? And you got to have that experience, which is fabulous. And so it's such a great example of like other stadiums to look towards. That's incredible. I can't wait to visit. So yeah.
Open invitation.
Thank you. So with that, I'm probably going to throw to Scott now, just on that sort of hearing like the stuff that we see going on in these high tech and international venues like the Intuit Dome, and just all of those incredible sort of tech opportunities and solutions that can be put in there. From, you know, the AFL perspective, and what has AFL and Marvel Stadium identified that maybe learnings from international stadiums and seeing what's going on over there that could be adapted into Australian stadiums in the same way to enhance that operational or fan engagement? However, with the caveat being that obviously we have mindful that, you know, budgets between the US stadiums and Australian stadiums are quite different. So, you know, what are some of the feasible things that we can look to overall that we can put into that?
Yeah, thanks. And hearing Tanya speak, and we've actually got a trip to the Intuit Dome coming up that we're working on as an industry to sort of check out some of what's happening. So Tanya, we'll make sure we can.
Sorry, Scott, I'm going to interrupt you. We've got a bit of background noise on your microphone there, I think. All good. A little bit, but see, try again. That's all good. Can we hear you? Nope.
Nope.
There you are. You're back.
Good.
Yes, fabulous. Thank you.
Exciting technology versus Australia versus global. Hopefully.
All good.
But I think as a philosopher, a lot of the philosophy and principles that internationally people are looking at from a tech perspective inside Stadia, you know, we're looking at. And I think from the starting point, and our outgoing CTO, Rob Pickering, who's recently moved to Tottenham, who many of you will know, he talked a lot about the baseline from an infrastructure perspective. I think if you look at anything you want to do technology-wise in Stadia, the network and basically the building blocks of what you want to do are really important, because without the connectivity you need at a 5G level and beyond, you can't really do a whole lot of cool stuff. So I think one thing we focused on as part of our redevelopment, amongst others, is around making sure that tech infrastructure building block was there. So when we do want to do tech-related items and things that rely on connectivity, we can do them. I think from a philosophical perspective also, a lot of similarities. I think we want to be, and we believe we are, the most technologically advanced stadium in the Southern Hemisphere, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but it's not technology for technology's sake. I think for us, that removing friction from someone's experience, that's what technology's role is. And I think it's about bringing the game and bringing elements of your visitation experience, be that food and beverage, other different products, loyalty and engagement, in-seat upgrades, and all of those things, bringing them closer to you and bringing the fan closer to the game. And again, I won't go too much into some of our experience from a fan and connection to the game radio piece, because I'm sure, you know, Tim's got a lot to share on that, and there's a really great story around her two Australian businesses working on something quite innovative. But I think that fan being closer to the game inside the venue is really important. It's again, particularly whether it's football or cricket, particularly the volume of content that we have, it's pretty good from the lounge room, and it's pretty easy to consume in the right way. So I think why are you coming, and what are the things that make it easier for you? I think where we've looked at and certainly mirrored in some areas is around some of our retail technology. From an Amazon, our partnership with the Just Walk Out technology, we're the first stadia in the Southern Hemisphere to do the autonomous retail. We've extended on that into not just the autonomous side of things, into sort of Mashkin assisted checkout, self-service kiosks, things like that are every single person in the stadium is going to engage with. And generally speaking, in Australia, we're not as tech forward in venues. We always play a bit of catch up. I think what we've seen is that the Just Walk Out technology has been excellent, but the mix of different technologies and the one that's most like what you do outside of a stadium is the one that tends to work best for you. So again, we see you know, the Uniqlo style mashkin items where you weigh things and you walk out, highly, highly effective for a certain demo and a certain age group. The people who do a lot of self-service kiosking, whether it's the supermarket or other places, very much like the self-service kiosk we have here. So I think in all of that, there's a technology solution, but important that we always still do cater. If someone wants to go to a traditional outlet, go and see someone, have them take their order and walk out too, we make sure we cater for those as well. We are obviously wanting to be very technology forward, but at the same time, as we progress, we don't really want to leave anyone behind either. So in terms of the experiences that we offer, that mix of tech forward and innovative, but also traditional has been really important for us. I think from a ticketing side of things, it's interesting we talk about biometrics. You know, we're at the point of NFC mobile kind of pedestal style technology where there's not gone are the days where you've got your turnstiles and that's the way you enter a venue. Obviously work very hard with our partner Ticketmaster and others around having more intuitive technology that enables more seamless entry, and we can configure the gate based on the type of event. So the type of ingress pattern we're going to get for a Pink concert, for instance, is very, very different to what we're going to get from Essendon versus Western Bulldogs on a Saturday night here. So again, the variety of content and the flexibility that our ticketing system gives us is certainly a benefit. And I think the biometric piece, we will run a trial on some biometric technology in 2025. It'll be a smaller trial because I think, as I said, particularly with the volume of content we have from an AFL perspective, we're still moving people off plastic cards and paper tickets into digital. So we're on a bit of a journey there, but I think the biometric piece is really cool and important. And equally, it's not just because it's cool and it's technology and it's a bit wow, but it actually makes the entry experience for someone easier and enhances the way in which they enter our venue and by design and by extension, the experience that they have. So I think they're all the things we're currently doing from a technology perspective, but I think there's a long list of things we can do and could do. I think over the next, 6, 12, 18 months, probably more of an infinite game than anything else, looking at the things that we believe in this market that we can deliver and deliver well, that are going to deliver the best bang for buck on that experience perspective.
Yeah, fabulous. Yeah, you touched on it really well. So that Marvel Stadium redevelopment, and you touched on it around like the spaces and the entry points, and all of that was being considered so well with the fabulous sort of retail shopping precinct that you're making it. And obviously there was a lot of consideration into that to make that sort of a destination that's sort of multifaceted rather than just, come here, watch a game and then head off, it's been fabulous. So if anyone hasn't sort of been down there recently, it's looking fantastic. And yeah, it's a cool place to hang out. I also saw you guys are going to do some live sites as well for the finals, which will be a great place to hang out as well. Yeah, awesome. So we're going to delve a bit now further into that stadium. So I'm going to throw to Tim now to talk about some of the stuff that we've already touched on. So it'd be really interesting to hear about CloudMix from that stadium context. So how is CloudMix applying your solution in that stadium context? And I guess, talk maybe a bit about, that operational efficiencies that come from being able to, and that advantages over any traditional infrastructure. Would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So CloudMix, we're a cloud-based platform, and we do all sorts of cool things with streaming audio and video. And up until about December last year, we were thinking online predominantly. So we had great technology for adding graphics to broadcasts and streams and adding commentary in real time for streams. And then we got a call from Telstra doing some work with Marvel saying, hey, can you help us out in giving us zero latency streaming in a stadium? And I thought, oh yeah, surely we can do something like that. So we really repurposed our commentary technology as well as adding commentary to a stream in real time, but bringing that down in real time to people who want to listen to that commentary piece. So it's really interesting what we've done with Marvel is now we've got in the Marvel app, you can listen to the radio commentary of the AFL matches, which is going on at a latency of around about 200 milliseconds. And this is over sort of the public internet. So it's not bound by a particular Wi-Fi network you need to be on. You can be on Wi-Fi, you can be on the 5G, you can even be on 4G if that's where your phone roams to. And you can have that sort of real-time audio experience coming down. And we were really excited about that because for us, sports and entertainment is all about the community who take part in that and who love that, and the storytelling that goes on alongside the events that happen. And having that voice in your ear, or that commentator from your favorite radio station or whichever one you like, listening to them tell that story that maybe you're used to getting at home. If you think, as Tanya said, you're at home and you've got the fridge there, you've got the commentary on, that's your experience of the football or whatever the sport is, and being able to translate that back into the stadium. So you've got those same commentators that you're used to in your ear telling you the story. Incredibly exciting. And for us as a cloud company, it was really exciting to sort of be moving into stadium tech without doing too much of the infrastructure piece at stadium. So using very clever cloud stuff to be able to roll that out. It's been really exciting. I think it provides a number of operational efficiencies because it's quite easy to roll this out to, potentially other stadiums with the right, connected infrastructure. First, having that 5G, having that connectivity there. Other than that, everything lives up in the cloud, coming back down in real time to people at the stadiums. And we're so excited about it because it's that. We love sport, we love entertainment, but we love communities of people who have that special interest, whether it's basketball, if it's AFL football, if it's a music concert, something like that. And building the community around that with this real-time fan engagement has been tremendous for us. And it's been, fantastic to be involved with Marvel Stadium and with Telstra, delivering a Melbourne first solution.
Yeah, and if I could add, just from a venues perspective, I think, we started at Marvel Stadium 25 years ago. We had TVs in the seats, and we thought that was the most amazing thing of all time, and that had real-time audio, and that was great. I think the zero latency radio for us, as part of our overarching new Marvel Stadium app, which obviously working very closely with Telstra and CloudMix and others on, I think the app, the key USP for our app, one of those is the zero latency radio. But what that also gives us the ability to do is build out other things within the app to make it more functional. The reality is, why would you download a Marvel Stadium app when we have 5 tenant clubs? There are 15 different AFL clubs that play here, 3, 4, 5 different cricket teams and artists and the like. So having something so strong and so beneficial as that in our app as an anchor point is really important for us to then talk about. Obviously, having an SDK plugin for a ticketing wallet. We know that people look at their ticket on average when they have one, not when it's their hand or their face like it is at Intuit Dome, but they're looking at their ticket 20 to 25 times before they get into the ground. And so within an app environment, you've got food and beverage offers for point of sale that are connected into our partner at Delaware in the venue, digital wayfinding with a fan cam. So I think the strength of having something so good that enhances the core proposition of what we do inside the venue, which is the sporting content on the field, also has strengthened our ability to have a more one-to-one personalized connection with the fan inside the venue, which is not something we've had or had the ability to do for a period of time. And I think as an extension of that, the other thing that this does is also strengthen some of the trialing we're doing with Telstra around an accessibility product for vision impaired, which is called Touch and Track, which is where vision impaired people can have a tablet of sorts with a magnetic ring on it, and they can follow the ball around on an AFL field. So they can feel where the ball is. They're getting the commentary about what's happening in their ear, and they're feeling the stadium experience of the atmosphere and the environment, all in the one spot, all enabled by technology solutions, which is something that between us and Telstra and the team, we're very looking forward to rolling out in greater scale in next year. But again, at the core of that is a proposition that, a Melbourne business and an Australian stadia are sort of leading the way in that, which is really cool.
That's awesome. I love it. I might just stay on that piece about the I guess inclusivity, about the tech that can provide inclusivity. And so I'll open this up to anyone. So I have actually seen the example of what you were talking about, Scott, with the vision impaired and follow along, and it buzzes for certain different types of activities that are happening on the field, which is incredible. And it just goes into this whole sort of thought about, there's X amount of seats in the stadium. How do we, you know, broaden the diversity of that crowd and bring in new audiences and people that, you know, everybody wants to watch sport and be a part of it? How do we make sure that everybody's welcome? What are some other, is there any other sort of, I guess, tech or initiatives that are going on in and considerations in stadiums, and maybe some of the stuff that went into the Intuit Dome as well, around that diversity and inclusion piece, about broadening the audience and the experience for all?
Yeah, I think without talking too much, and I'll throw over to Tim and to Tanya in a moment, but just on the recent redevelopment, a big focus of that has been around inclusivity and accessibility. We were one of the first stadium in the country with a fully functioning sensory room. We now have 2 of those, and again, highly patronised for people with high accessible needs, medium accessible needs, and even low accessible needs. So we're very proud of the work we've been able to do in that space too. I think even beyond that, you know, a parents' room. We now have a parents' room for mothers and parents and people with young children to feed, to change, for respite and other things that they need to do. We also have a changing places area that's available for match day, of course, but also for non-match day. So I think a big part of this, how these facilities and amenities from an accessibility perspective service the community outside of just the 65, 70 times we have really big stuff happening here at the venue. So I think we've been really, you know, really thrilled with both the design and how we've been able to implement that for the community. And I think, you know, we scale that up. So for instance, for a pink, there'll be areas and rooms behind stages that we'll utilise for additional respite spaces, breakout spaces for people with accessible needs, and even for people who just need some respite. We work really hard on making sure we've got accessible platforms for people who have mobility issues to enjoy concerts, because typically we've got obviously a finite number of accessible places where you can actually see the stage, and you know, what we don't want to do is not be able to cater for those once those opportunities are exhausted. So we build platforms, we create new spaces where people can consume an event or a sporting match or something else. So I think that's the work we're doing. Again, it's an infinite game, and we're always working at it. We do work really closely with the hidden disability Sunflower team around, you know, how we identify and how we manage those things in venue. But it's something that is a really big focus for us to make sure that all people, accessible needs or not, are catered for experientially at our venue.
Yeah.
I would just add on, I think a lot of what Scott said is very much aligned to what we're seeing and feeling as well. And I think that when you think about the how digital supports the diversity of the fan base, I think is quite important. Everything from whether you need sensory inclusive spaces and seats, because some people can get into sensory overload. How do we create those spaces for them to have those moments so they can still participate but not feel overwhelmed, all the way through to even the assistive technologies that support, whether it's from mobile accessibility features or digital screens to support wayfinding and ways to get around, and also how to get support and help when you need it. And, you know, you mentioned mothers and or elderly and or those who have a disability of some sort, some seen, some unseen, creating those spaces for them to be have it. We actually have also explored VIP and concierge services. So if you acknowledge in advance and there's a special place that you can either send an email, send a WhatsApp message, or call in advance and say, I'm arriving with someone or I myself, and I need this kind of support, that you will actually get escorted in and make sure that all the places are called out and highlighted for you. So you know exactly where to go and how to get what you need from accessibility perspective. But as Scott mentioned, I think we're learning every day. I think all of us are, how to be better when it comes to diversity and inclusivity of all sorts, and making sure that the ecosystem is supportive of it. So the constant feedback loop is also important. What worked, what didn't, what was not enough, what was too much, what was not accessible that you hoped was. And I think the other side of that, which might also be interesting, is when you think about those that can actually physically not come to any of the games or in the space itself, how do you create those experiences at home for them? So where does AR and VR, for example, from a technology perspective, support their ability to feel like they're in the stadium, to be able to, you know, feel and hear and even smell and touch some things that actually give them the feeling of being a part of that, even if they can't physically be there, I think is another kind of extension of what many of the teams are thinking about.
Yeah, Tim, that might be something for Cloud Mix. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, in terms of sort of this zero latency audio that we're doing, it on one hand, it sounds a little bit unsexy because it's just someone talking in your ear as you're at an event or if you're at home. But I think it's wonderful that technology opens up the idea that you could have different languages potentially talking in your ears, or different versions of the commentary of the match going. So that's not like, I mentioned before, we love the story of the sport, and we feel like quite often commentators, you know, direct that story, but there's no one right way to enjoy the sport that you might be there for. You might prefer this story, you might want it in this language, and having the ability for this sort of zero latency audio, I think, opens up ways that we can include and grow many different sports and events to people who might not otherwise feel like they can sort of participate as fully. So it's exciting times.
That's fantastic. And yeah, as you said, Tanya, like we just keep evolving in this space. So I'm really excited. Tim, I'll stay with you because I want to understand and you know, not to sort of delve into any negativity, but what are the challenges or any of those technical challenges that you would need to consider or overcome when you're delivering these cloud-based services? Like, you know, we've talked about the infrastructure and I mean, Scott mentioned, I think it was sort of that the base level of infrastructure that's required. What are some of the other areas and challenges that you sort of need to look at?
It's actually been really interesting for us because as you know, a cloud company, we're used to delivering to viewers all over the world, people listening everywhere. So there's established technical paths to do that, and there's load balancing and ways to make sure you can have, you know, many hundreds of thousands or millions of people watching a stream. It's a very different challenge, sort of translating that cloud technology just to one small geographic area, because quite often all of the viewers or the listeners in this case will be using the same networks going up to the same sort of closest server farm, which, you know, it's harder to have those redundancies and failovers if everyone's hitting the same server. So we're worried about, you know, maybe 50,000 people all in Marvel, all listening at the same time, as opposed to, you know, 500,000 people globally. So without getting super technical, we did a lot of work with sort of some of our multi-cloud infrastructure so that we're not just Amazon. We're using a couple of different providers there who can all service the close area with super low latency. So it's like, from a technical perspective, it was a really fun challenge, I guess I'd say, in terms of how we could support a large number of people at a small location from the cloud. And again, just to reiterate, this service works over the open internet, so it's not bound to a specific Wi-Fi network or carrier 4 or 5G. The idea is it can be accessible to anyone with any kind of network connection who's there at the stadium. So it was a fun challenge, and I can say it's fun because we succeeded in it. But yeah, it's just like, as a software company, it's a very different mindset to how can we, you know, support a global viewer base, to how can we give these people in this location the very best experience.
Yeah, right. And so does that sort of, and also then open up to sort of that scalability from, like, we're talking like massive stadiums with huge audiences down to like smaller venues and all that. Is that sort of, you know, that's the possibilities are endless, really? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's sort of this technology, if you've got that base layer of infrastructure available, then it, you know, potentially can be rolled out to potentially smaller venues as well. There might not be radio commentary at some of the smaller venues out there, but there are ways that can work. And there are challenges both ways. Like the more people who are tuning in at one location, the more you need to be relying on that really good 4G or 5G or Wi-Fi, and thanks to Telstra or whoever, you know, whoever's supporting with that. And then as you get down a bit smaller, we've had a look around, and there's less technical expertise sometimes. So how can you have a solution that's simple to roll out that can still provide a good service? So whichever way we look, there are challenges, but
Yeah.
they're all fun.
But there's possibilities and opportunities as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way we'll look at it. Awesome. I'm going to come back to mobile because Tanya, you said something really interesting in the early part. So obviously a lot of the stuff that we're seeing and a lot of the tech and that fan engagement stuff is very mobile first, mobile driven. But then balancing it with, you know, you don't want people just being on their phone the entire time that they're at the stadium. And we've talked about a lot of those, the stuff that's in mobile, and a lot of it sort of comes down to that frictionless experience. So, but I just wanted to sort of understand from, is that, are we looking mobile first for the ways that we transform that fan interaction? And I think, does it go into, you know, before, during, and then after the events as well, and that sort of whole timeline? So yeah, I'll start with you, Tanya, and then obviously everyone else wants to jump in.
No, it's exactly right. When you talk about that, Amy, it is looking at how does mobile and digital in general enable or enhance the experience. It's not technology. I think Scott said this earlier. It's not technology for technology's sake. I think it has to be something that is fundamentally helping you make a decision, helping you make a choice, giving you direction, doing something for you that allows you to be a part of the experience itself. And to your point, the mobile experience looks very different depending on where you are on your journey. Pre-event, it might be a lot more interactive and active because you're looking for tickets, you're looking for seats, you're identifying where you want to be, you're looking for this layout of the stadium, you're doing a lot of those interactions pre. You might be purchasing some gear to wear when you show up to the game. So there's a lot of activity that happens pre. During, it should really be when you are not interacting or dynamically part of the experience itself. So when the game or the match is on, not having to have your mobile experience with you in order to be able to experience the game is very important. So it has to be something that is supplemental, that adds to that. And then, you know, even in especially for, of course, many of the US sports, centric sports like the NBA or NFL, we have a lot of breaks. It's very different than football. We have a lot of breaks. We have commercial breaks and we have timeouts, and we have a lot of things that happen in between a game. So the continuity is quite different. You know, when we go to football games, you're there for that period of time. And it's very rare anybody gets up to do anything. Whereas if you go to an NBA game or an NFL game or even a Major League Baseball game, that people are coming and going constantly, they're interacting differently. So how do you minimize that disruption by not giving them these other things that are going to distract them during the point of the game, I think is kind of an interesting thing to think about. And then how do you make sure that experience is so enlightening that they want to maintain it and keep it? Then there is the post. I mean, that's all during. And then there's the post, which is truly how do we leverage that for continuous interaction, for leveraging our CRM systems, for marketing and communication, and building that network and that loyalty and that community throughout that experience. And, you know, I think you were mentioning the Pink concert, and I was talking about concerts before. Very different experience, obviously, when you're going for a one-time event, one night only, or, you know, just for the weekend, whatever it might be, versus a continuous experience that you have with a team or a league or a fanship. So thinking about all of those personas and how they want to experience the actual physical experience, and then how they want to leverage digital. I think another thing, I can't recall if maybe Tim or Scott or both of you said, is it's definitely very different generationally as well, as we see, you know, some certain concert series and how they interact with digital and what their experience is and what they want versus others. Different parts of the country, for us in the US, has very different dynamics and what the expectations are in leveraging digital. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration when you're building these experiences. And where mobile plays a significant role is it needs to be clean enough, seamless enough, easy enough that it's not a distraction. It needs to be something that is part of so much ingrained in part of the experience that you almost don't know it's happening. It's just there. And for many people, that's what they expect. You know, some of the other experiences we have as consumers, whether it's our ability to purchase things and have it sent to our house via Amazon or otherwise, we already have those expectations of ease, speed, reliability. So making sure that that mobile experience within that stadium is doing the same thing, I think, is quite important.
Yeah, definitely. Anyone else want to add to that one?
Comprehensive and all bang on. I think the topic of personalization is a really interesting one, and I think when you talk about a venue like Marvel Stadium, where we're the busiest multi-purpose stadium in the world. So from a stadium perspective, 54,000 for AFL, up to 65 for concerts, as small as 30 for some types of events, to 5,000 people conferences. I think the preferences that people have, how they want to receive information, the information that's important to them, that's an ongoing sort of day-to-day piece of work that we do around how we segment our communications, how we communicate to different customer groups. And I suppose where we've started now with this new app is our ability to actually tap into those preferences. We have a lot of people who come here fairly regularly who know the venue really well. And then we have some people who are coming for a Stray Kids K-pop concert who have probably never set foot in this building ever and would never have reason to. So I think that journey experience and how we communicate from the point of purchase through to being at the event and then afterwards is really important for us. And I think where versus a lot of other international venues, particularly in the United States, who've got sort of one tenant, one team or two teams, that is a little easier. I think for us, we're still working through and improving how we, in a multi-tenanted venue that's got 13 different types of sporting and entertainment content happen in any one season, how we find the right way without going down every single rabbit hole to its zenith, but how we find the right way consistently to show up for people in the way in which they want us to. And I won't say that we've nailed that right now, but it's certainly the journey that we're on as we continue to try and deliver experiences. To Tanya's point, when they're expecting things to be the way they should be and the way they want them to be, how we understand what those expectations are and how we meet them, again, is another infinite game which we continue to play, supported by technology and supported ultimately by people.
Brilliant. I'm just going to remind everyone we will have time for Q&A, so please feel free to pop a question into the Q&A in Zoom. So what I'll do whilst everyone's sort of thinking about their questions, I've got a question that I'll throw out to everyone. So we've just finished the Olympics. We're in the middle of the Paralympics. That's been such a great sort of way of us to sort of see these fantastic use of stadiums and venues and technology. So, 4 years' time, we've got LA 2028, 8 years, Brisbane 2032. So tech rapidly evolving. I'm keen to sort of get everyone's, or maybe pull out the crystal ball or just some thoughts and some ideas. We won't hold you to anything. What do you either think that we will see in 4 or 8 years? What do you want to see around that? And then, what do we need to do to sort of keep that innovation sort of mindset and going as well? So I'll throw that out there and make sure you get your questions coming in, guys.
I think the app and what the app exists to do is going to be fascinating over the next 2, 4, 6, even 8 years as we get into the Olympics. I think the app for the Olympics, which I'm sure everyone would have downloaded and had a bit of a play around with over time, I thought that was as complete an app experience for the person at home and for those who were lucky enough to be there, which I was not one of them, sadly. I'm told the interoperability of the app and how it interacted with the venue, be that from a wayfinding food and beverage experience perspective, was sort of new levels and new territories. And I think, again, whether or not, the advances in ticketing technology, if biometrics is the next or it's coming right now, is biometrics in 6 to 8 years now what NFC and mobile ticketing was is now. Is it more relevant? And again, how that interacts from a venue perspective, from a payment side of things, how you're basically who you are as your ticket to do whatever you need to do inside a venue or inside an event. I think that's where we're going to see that sort of next wave. And I think particularly in Australia, as I said, we're a bit slower to adopt some of those more forward technologies from a ticketing and access perspective. I'll be fascinated, but excited to see how a global event like the Olympics, as forward thinking, both technologically and from a cultural perspective as it is, can help continue to drive or accelerate the change from a stadium technology perspective here in this country.
Yeah.
From my point of view, my crystal ball for the next Olympics coming up, I'm excited to see how tech can unlock more inclusivity and more personalization for both, in stadium experience and maybe at home broadcasts at the same time. I think there's huge potential to open up events to bigger audiences who might not know they love it yet because they feel excluded for some reason, or it's not, the story isn't told in the right way, or they don't feel they can be part of that. I feel like that sort of intersection of the personalization piece, where this person wants this in that way, can be broadened out to this group of people would appreciate this happening in this certain way, and using tech to unlock that, whatever that tech looks like in 8 years' time. But using that to increase the enjoyment of the event that's going on and make people feel like they can be included and that they are part of that event. I think that's going to be really exciting and really great for everyone.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Great.
I tend to agree with both of you. I think that we're going to definitely see an evolution of all the tech that we're seeing today. So we're talking about smart venues and what they look like, the use of IoT sensors, the ability to manage and controls crowds. I think security obviously is always one of the highest considerations for the Olympics and or similar types of events of that size, magnitude, and that global. So how do we leverage tech in those avenues? I think is going to be quite important. The customization and personalization. I always say this as just an avid Olympics fan, is that I really want to just touch screen and watch exactly the events that I'm most interested in the way that I want to view them, and also not just representing the country that I happen to live in and get broadcasted to. So I want to see games and events from outside of the US as well. So I think, to your point, Tim, the ability to have that enhanced broadcasting and viewing experience, I think is going to be a truly remarkable thing that in 4 years and in 8 years time is going to make everything super personalized. And we think about, again, in 8 years, the generation that's going to be watching the Olympics, who are the ones, today that are much more rapidly picking up on that technology than many of us on this call are. It's going to be really, really important for them to feel like they are a part of something different and that they can, in literal terms, have it in their own hands, because not everyone can physically be everywhere at the same time. I think the other side of it, though, that's quite interesting, that we're seeing a little bit of work. We're doing some work with FIFA and the World Cup as well. And what we're seeing there is the idea of wearable tech and athletic performance, being able to manage, monitor, but also predict, so that and you can prevent injuries and things of that nature, will be another really interesting technology that's coming for the Olympics and beyond. I think it's being tested in many cases right now that, again, can really help and make sure that we're supporting our athletes in their performance and their training, but also in that preventative capability, which I think is another really key thing. And then one other thing that comes to mind, and it's because I'm doing some work in autonomous vehicles as well, and this especially for these types of experiences at events, is just getting around. I mean, I happened to be in Paris in between the two events, and they still had a lot of things that were up, a lot of the security, the gates, and you had to walk miles just to get around things to get to where you wanted to get to. So I think this idea of technology in autonomous vehicles or transportation will be another interesting and maybe not commonly thought about efficiency that's going to come into play when we talk about movement of people and places, especially because, as is the case, Olympics is a pop-up. It's a pop-up. It's there for a certain number of days. It goes up, it comes down, and some of that stuff never gets seen again. So how do you make it modular and flexible so that it could easily pop up and easily be taken down? I think is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, it's because we need to think 8 years ahead, which is when you think 8 years behind, you weren't sort of predicting what's happening now. So it's very difficult, but I'm going to see what we do about the autonomous vehicles, Tanya. But I love it. And do you know what else? You did touch on something. The Olympics is such a good where you can experience a new sport or a new team or a new, what's going on. So it's really important. I do want to see just random stuff that I don't get to see every day, and from countries that I've never been to or things like that. So I've got a couple of questions. The first one is about biometrics. So, and it's about the security, data privacy sort of leaning of questions. So, you know, there's a bit of pushback in this area about the using biometric data, or people might be a bit apprehensive about it. So, you know, what's sort of the way that we're sort of going to manage that going forward around data privacy and security, do you think?
I think that's a whole nother hour webinar. There is so much conversation. And of course, not only, you know, the topic itself, but it's super country and in some places state specific. So for the US, every state has a different rule about logging and capturing information, how long you can hold it onto, what you can do with it. However, I think the flip side is that your biometrics are being captured every single day in everything that you do. Besides the fact that your mobile phone in your hand is capturing it every day, and that data is there and in other places. We're seeing it in travel, for example. If you ever go to some of the more advanced airports, most of them now have biometric recognition for pass-through, Clear. I know some of my Clear friends are on the call today. Those types of technologies are already leveraging the biometrics in that way. So lots of learning, I would say, but I think, Amy, you're hitting just a very, very important and controversial piece around how do we know it's okay? When is it okay and when is it not? And I think the opt-in, I can speak specifically for the Intuit Dome, it is an opt-in. So you have to opt in and you have to physically put in your own biometrics and say, I'm okay with you using this for me to have access in and out, for me to be able to have payments. We do not do it for children minorities under a certain age. So there are things like that, minors. There are things like that I do think allow for some protection. However, it is still an ongoing conversation on what's right, what's wrong, what's enough, what's bad, what's good. And people are absolutely fearful. Even those who are working in that space are still very fearful of some of the information that gets captured.
Yeah, and it's probably like, it sounds like it's an education piece, right? That sort of, you know, people, they just want to understand where it's, what you're doing with the data, how it's being used, what is it. And so, yeah, I think there's a whole part around that that probably needs to happen to ensure that we can alleviate any concerns. Because you're right, it's probably happening in places that you're not aware of. It's just that this is more overt sometimes. Yeah. Okay, so I have a question here from Sam. So for Tanya and Scott, so which technological innovation in your respective venues are you most surprised about from a fan or guest adoption perspective, either positive or negative, and why?
Interesting. I think I talked a bit about the food and beverage side of piece before, and that's one that stands out. We have 4 types of outlets. One that's completely autonomous, one that's a bit more sort of Uniqlo style, the Mashkin outlet, one that's like you're doing your groceries and traditional. I think interestingly, and as a bit of a test case, we put the autonomous retail, so one of the Amazon runner outlets, near a traditional outlet, largely doing the same thing, and how they perform when we first installed them. I think what probably what we underestimated was people's ability to migrate and change automatically. So I use an example of, you've got empty Amazon outlet selling the same stuff as super busy retail outlet. And, you know, we've hand-to-hand combat. We have people out there all the time educating, hand-holding and doing all those things. The resistance to the runner early on, I mean, people utilized it, but I was surprised that someone, and I think it's the psychology of queue commitment, and I know what I know, and I'm not going to give it a go sort of thing, which is a bit prevalent from a Stadia technology perspective, particularly in this country. I was surprised by that. And I think on the flip side, I think what surprised me was the uptake, which shouldn't have been surprising in hindsight, of things that are more like what people do in their everyday life. So if you look at Mashkin and assisted and self-service kiosks, they exceeded our expectations, which again is a connection into probably the psychology of people, in that if I know what I'm doing and I feel like I can do it and I'm in control, then I'm naturally going to more probably take that on faster. Whereas if it's something that I'm not quite sure about, how do I know I'm not getting ripped off? Or how does a technology like Amazon actually know what I've got, which, even though it's accurate to 99.999 recurring, You can say that all you like, but I think at the end of the day, that was surprising to me but again, on reflection, probably not. But I think over time, what it does say is that the constant reinforcement is required on things that are really new and different, and making sure you've got a really robust sort of training program, which I think that's something we've focused in on over time. But it was surprising to see how, maybe it was a little under expectation from a starting point, but has rapidly caught up as people have gotten familiar with it. I don't know if that's your experience, Tanya, also from a Stadia perspective.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
that
have
sounds
very
like there's an
similar.
entire like psychology PhD in how people.
Yes. In fact, we almost did that, not at all scientifically, but a group of us, from the team, as we had opening day, kind of stood there and watched and observed what was happening, people's behaviors, the adoption, the lack of adoption, the interest and no interest, oh gosh, I have to do this. It's very, very interesting to see how it kind of comes to play. But again, I think one of the things that was mentioned just in this conversation is this is the wave that we're going to have to, we're surfing it. We're on it, we're surfing it. So everyone is going to eventually get there. It's just like any other major technology disruption that's happened, in our time. This is just going to move faster because that's what technology does. So it'll get there.
Awesome. I do have one more question if everyone is okay, otherwise we can, we'll do it really quickly. So we've got a question here from Kip. The global landscape contains a range of rights holders with a range of appetites for technology adoption. What are the more progressive organisations, and is there any interesting innovation that you would like to share on what they're pursuing? So we're keen to, I think this is an important question because it goes into, how do we keep, trying out new things and bringing up new technologies. So keen to sort of get your quick answers on that.
My really quick answer is a lot of work that I see with the AFL and the NBL here in Australia is doing a lot of high quality broadcast of non-tier 1 matches, which enables fans of more sub leagues or tier 2 or tier 3 to have a really wonderful experience and have that fan engagement around a non-premier level sport. And I think it's fantastic for fans and fantastic for sport.
Absolutely agree. Yep. If anyone else wants to add.
A lot of things going in my head, but I didn't square in on one.
Well, good. I think what is important about this is that, to be able to keep trialing that, and I think every single person in the panel had used the word like trial or test or something like that. That's so important to have that, I guess, mindset as we sort of look at new things and new ways to engage fans and have audiences and have a good time at a stadium, So, it's fantastic that all three of our panelists have brought all of their fabulous insights on the innovations that are happening in Australia and around the world. We really appreciate your time today. It's been a fabulous discussion. Thank you so much for joining us. I've seen Martin just popped up to say thanks as well. Thank you. We will be having a recording of this session for anyone that wasn't able to catch it, and we will post that up on our website. But thank you again, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fun.